Hey fantasy fans, welcome back, and today we're going to be reviewing Ruin, the third book in The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. Let's get into it. Okay guys, so before we get into the review, as always, thank you for the support. If you guys like this content I'm making, and you want to see my final review for Wrath eventually, please like and subscribe and hit that bell notification to be notified when my next video comes out. So today I'm going to talk about Ruin by John Gwynne. So this is the third book in The Faithful and the Fallen. It's it's a very interesting book for sure, a very action-filled book. So in this review, I'm going to talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about Ruin. So again, this is going to be spoiler-filled. It's the third book in a series. Hopefully you've read or listened to Valor and Malice before watching this review. So again, there is going to be spoilers. So let's get into what I liked about Ruin. Okay, guys. So let's talk about what was really good about Ruin. So the things I really liked were a lot of the character developments, a lot of the promises that John Gwynne was fulfilling in this book. The plot was very, very strong, and I kind of really want to talk about some of the action that happened in this book. So this book is really good. I really enjoyed it, so it's probably going to color some of my review here already. So let's get into some of the character moments. Okay guys, so there's a lot of character moments in this book where John Gwynne is kind of starting to fulfill those promises, and there's some big deaths. Like I really like in his books that he's not afraid to kill characters, especially characters that you like. And there's so much action in this book. This is like one of those books where it's just like literally, cover to cover, total action, which I really enjoyed. Like, it didn't feel like too much. There were some really good moments where he did break it up, but some of the things I want to talk about were like the big character deaths. He had some big deaths come out here, guys. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to put them out there. So, again, you're warned, spoilers. So these are some of the deaths that were really crazy in the book. We finally started to see some baddies die. It's about time in this series. So, we got deaths by Braith. We got Evnis's death, I hope. I'm pretty sure Evnis is dead. Ulfalas, he was a character, he was a POV character that I'm like, I just don't care. I know why his POV was there. His POV was there just to, give you an eye on what's happening with JL. Because you're not supposed to like JL, so you're not going to give him a POV. So, giving Ulfalas POV, you get to see JL's point of view, or see JL, and, JL. He's John Gwynne's really made JL just to be a complete piece of crap. He's just an awful human, which is good. He's just a good villain. You love to hate him. So yeah, Ulfalas dies. He gets killed by Wolf. He's one of the he was Graham's son up in Graham's hold. So he was really cool seeing Ulfalas get killed, get his head cut off. And Sumor. So Sumor was one of the Jihar, who was then taken over by a Catershim, and then he died against, he had a duel with Corbin one-on-one. That was sweet. That was a really intense moment. It's more tense actually after the duel happens, really, when you have this big reveal at the end by Michael, when Michael and Corbin have their talk. I won't spoil that, but yeah, so really after you fight Sumor, you're like, holy, this is a crazy fight, really good fight. And then later you realize, oh, wow, after Michael's revelation, you're like, oh, this is even more, it makes Corbin seem even more impressive, in my mind at least. So some of the baddies died, but then some good characters died, and you're like, oh, I know, it broke my heart. One was Tuckle. Having Tuckle die, I knew Tuckle was going to die, I just didn't know when Tuckle was going to die. And yeah, it's kind of sad that he dies before they make it to Drasil. He didn't get to make it back, which is really sad. But he went out fighting and he killed a giant bear that a giant rides. It was epic. So Tuckle dying was really sad. But he's such a great character. He's one of those characters that he's like that fatherly figure who he was so good. Tuckle was so good, and he was like a father to Corlin almost a little bit in the short time they knew each other. You know, he's Gar's father. So good. And then, you know, other deaths where Michael dies. I did see that kind of coming, like near the end there. And yeah, it wasn't as painful. You know, he is a Benelim, so you know he's not dead. He just goes back to that like that spirit realm, I guess, where you know he's back with his buddies there. But he's no longer there to advise Corbin. Not that Corbin would want his advice right now, I guess, near the end of the book. And then the other big death at the end was Balor One Eye. So Balor fought Alcyon in the End of Valor and took the Starstone Axe. And then, you know, you have like all these moments with Balor throughout the book. And he's kind of this cool, you learn so much about him. He's really old, like he's this great warrior. And yeah, he was such a cool character. Like even though you never got a POV from him, like he was there and he was present with Cohen and Corbin. And yeah, really liked Balor One Eye, and it sucks that he died, but you can see why he had to be killed. Man, very good. So many deaths, so many like just John Gwynne starting to fulfill those promises. Like we're wrapping up. There's one more book left in this series, so he's like, okay, I gotta start killing some of these characters. Really glad that Ebnis and Braith are gone. I kind of wish Morcant got it in this book, but I guess we'll save that for another. I guess we'll save that for Wrath. Hopefully, Morcant gets it. So I just want to move on to some of the more character moments that I really enjoyed in this book. Okay, so there's a few things that happened that I liked. Like Veritas red-pilled himself. Pretty much, he finally became interesting, and he did something that was interesting, and he did something worthwhile. You know, he meets back up with Nether. Nether, like, he knows he's the Black Sun. He's the baddie. He's gone down this path of evil. He's made a pact with Azeroth now. He's pretty much he pulled a Daenerys in a sense, like before Daenerys could be pulled, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, that was a stupid analogy, sorry. But yeah, he's like gone full Darth Vader in a sense. He's like, you know, he's accepted that he's the Black Sun and he's just going to rule this empire in the name of Azeroth. And, you know, this gets revealed to Veritas, and Veritas is like, yeah, I'm not down with that. Cool. Like, that's not cool. So, you know, Veritas, like, red pills himself. He attacks Calidus, you know, frees Alcyon. It's so good. This is actually a really good moment for Veritas. Veritas had a few actually good moments, too, like when he's meeting with his brother Krellis. And he had a few moments with Machian when they eventually meet back up. So good. Like, Veritas thankfully pulled his head out of his ass. Saw the light, and I mean, I'm sure he's alive. Like, you see him last jumping out a window or getting thrown out of a window with Alcyon, and they just dove out. I'm assuming they're alive. We didn't get any more POVs after that for him, so I'm assuming they're wounded, and then you'll see them again in Wrath, is what I'm expecting. So, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is Machian and Fidele. So I know I've gushed in like my Malice and my Valor review about how Machian was my favorite character, and like this book further cements like he's one of my favorite characters. Even in the fantasy genre, just love this character, this old wolf, this grizzled veteran. He like, and, you know, in Valor he escaped with Fidele, and they're running from Lycos, and they're, you know, they have these beautiful moments together. Like, they both like have so much character development together where you know, they give each other reasons to live, and then they fall in love through this time that they spend in the woods, like running from Lycos. And it's brilliant. It's so good. It's, you know, this was like a well set up and well earned and like love interest and relationship that you're rooting for the whole time. You're seeing it being built. He just did it really well, and you feel you have such an emotional connection to both these characters because they both suffered so much under Lycos, and just having them come together and find this love, and it was great. I love Mackie, and he deserves it. He deserves to be happy. My God, and it's nice that he's not just this ball of revenge, this fury. Like, he is a fury. Don't get me wrong, but he, you know, like there was a moment when Machian was okay. Full spoiler. like Mackian almost died at one point, and I'm like, Mackian almost died a few times, but like there's this one point like he was literally like he was on the freaking bricks, like he was walking the bridge of swords, and he's just like, son of a bitch, like, you know, Mackian's my favorite character, and they're gonna kill him right as he has his love interest. And then he's on the Bridge of Swords, and he meets like one of the Ben and Lim, and he's like, "You have a choice. Like, go join Castel." And Castel's there, and like Mackian's dad and his family, and they're all crying, and he's crying, and you're just like, "Frick, this is brutal." And then he makes the choice to go back to Fidelay, like this love that that they built together, that he fell in love with her, and he chose to come back. Forsaking Castel, essentially says, "I will see you again, but I have to go back for this woman." And it's so good. You're just like, oh yes, right choice. So yeah, love Mackian, love Fidelay. The guy's just such a good character. Still my favorite character. And then I want to talk about Camelin. Holy, Camelin is such a smart character. So you don't realize how smart he is until this book. I mean, I knew he was smart, but how skilled this guy is with a bow, how smart he is. He played everyone. Like, he played Braith, he played frickin' Evnus. This guy, like, he was playing 3D chess the whole time. Like, love Camelin, such a good character. Again, like, these older characters, and they're great. They're so good. Like, Camelin, Gar, a little bit less Gar in this book. Mackian, God, they're so brilliant. They're so it just proves, like, it shows you, like, the age, like, how age brings you wisdom, and these characters just keep showing it time and time again. So these are enough of the good things about the book. Like, there's so many good things, so much action in this book, great character development, further developing these characters you already love. So one of the things I want to talk about now are, like, what I didn't like about Ruin. Okay, guys, so there is actually a few negatives here that I have. It might not actually overall affect my overall rating of Ruin. But these are some negatives that did keep kind of cropping up. And one of the big things was the time jumping. So Gwynne, I've noticed over these two books, is very sneaky with time jumps. He just kind of sneaks them in, and then you'll learn, like, oh, there's like a moment where Cohen's at the end. She's like recollecting on everything that's happened. She's like, oh, it's already been a year since my mom died. She's like, Jesus Christ, that was like quick. Like, I know you see some of the time passing for certain characters, like especially Mackian and Fidelay, where they're going through the woods, and like they are counting their days that they've been gone. So that's really good. But I found the time with, like, Corbin and Cohen, the time jumps were really excessive. Like, they'd be like, oh, we'd been in Drassel for 3 months. You're like, Jesus Christ, like, why don't you friggin' update me on that? Like, I'd like to know what happened in these 3 months. So it's just like, they built Drassel up to be this really cool place, and then they friggin' time jumped half of it. So when they were there, but it's a minor kind of gripe. So yeah, the time jumps were an issue for me. Okay, so another bad, and this is just more of an annoyance, and I know it was done for a plot device, was Lycos recapturing, like, Fidelay and Mackian. Like, I know it's done so that Fidelay and Mackian can be brought closer to Drassel. That's really all it was, because they were running away on the other end of, like, the banished lands, and it was clearly just a plot device to get them closer to where, like, Corbin and his crew were eventually going to be. So yeah, I just didn't like him being recaptured, rehashing this kind of, like, punishment. I mean, Lycus he got his comeuppance. He got bit in the face by Mackie. I'm like, oh, I wish he just bit his nose off. That would have been cool. But yeah, so that was just a little bit, like, I've had that plot in Valor. I don't need it again, but, like, it was done clearly to drive the story forward. So it wasn't too bad. Okay, so then the other thing for me is, like, Corbin really took a backseat in this book. Corbin, again, he's not my favorite character, but he is, like, the main character, the bright star. So I guess to put this in perspective, like, I went and counted all the chapters that Corbin had in Ruin, Valor, and Malice. So in Ruin, Corbin only had 12 chapters, which is 13% of the book. Valor, he had, I think it was 25 chapters, so that was actually 25% of the book. And in Malice, he had 35 chapters, which is like 37% of the book. So you're spending less and less time with Corbin, and maybe That's why I liked Valor and Ruin a little bit better. You know, because you're spending less time with these teenage characters. But, you know, Corbin got really interesting in this book. He developed a lot. He really became a leader. So it would have been nice to spend a little bit more time with him now that he's kind of come to accept he's this bright star. So pulling away from Corbin, like, I felt it kind of hurt a little bit. And, like, it would have been nice to spend a little bit more time with him. Like, we didn't need a lot of these chapters of, like, Othalas or Uthas the giant. It's just... yeah, more Corbin, please, in Wrath, I hope. So, and then I was going to get into the last thing that just wasn't, I just didn't like. So, let's get into that. And then the last thing, this just seems like, in this book, in this series, the baddies are just kicking the crap out of everyone. And it's almost to the point you're like, I don't see how the good guys can win. And it's almost to that point, you know, a few authors have done this where they've just made the big bad so big and bad, and like the odds are so far against them that, you know, the only way that the good guy's gonna pull it out is by pulling it out of his ass, or like a Deus Ex Machina. And that's just I really hope that doesn't happen with this series, because, you know, the bad guys, like, it's like the Empire Strikes Back at the end of this book. Like, the friggin' bad guys come out on top, and you're just like, these good guys cannot get a win. They're either shit, or like they're severely incompetent, or the bad guys are just hyper competent or very competent. And, yeah, that's my only worry, is that, you know, the bad guys really, like, just knock it out of the park for their, you know, themselves in this book. And, I just hope that Gwynne can, you know, turn it around so that the good guys can win in a realistic way, is my only concern. So, yeah, so that's some of the things I didn't like about Ruin. So let's get into my overall rating. Okay, guys, I'm sure I prattled on along here about Ruin. This is a great book. I really enjoyed this. As you can see, probably all saw, maybe you all saw, I gave Ruin 5 stars on Goodreads, but my rating doesn't work like that. I'm going to give Ruin 4.8 out of 5. I know that seems high after all the negatives I've just mentioned, but holy shit, this book was so good. Like, the action, all the character moments, like the deaths, there's so much in this book in the end that just, like, it just outweighed those negatives for me. Don't tell me, get me wrong, there are negatives. Like, there's negatives in the book, and I laid them out, the ones for me. But it did not stop me enjoying this book. This book, it's actually going to be hard for me to decide between which one I like more, between Valor and Ruin. I like it both because of Mackian, really, because I like his moments in Valor where he's like a gladiator and he's kind of like Spartacus, but then I also liked it in Ruin with his relationship with Fidele and just how friggin' badass he is. Like, this is one moment where Mackian's in the trees as he's like, "Oh, screw you, Fidele, you're an idiot, and I'm gonna walk away." And he walks away and he's like, "Blast that woman," and he starts walking back, but he hears them being tracked, and he climbs up in the trees, and he's all like Predator style. And he kills these like 7 guys who are, it was so good. Mackie is like the best character ever. Anyways, that's my review for my rating for Ruin, guys. It's a really good book. Please pick up this series. It's such a fun read. Like I said, guys, I flew through this series. I flew through Ruin. I'm really loving The Faithful and the Fallen. I cannot wait to finish Wrath or get into Wrath. Probably going to be in the month of December, I think now. Such a fun series, guys. I'm so glad I picked this up. Really loving it. I hope you guys are loving it too and reading along with me. And, you know, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.